The following program and contents, including the views and opinions expressed by the host and any guest speakers, are solely for informational and entertainment purposes. The views and opinions expressed are not endorsed or supported by Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The host and guest speakers are solely responsible for their own perspectives, and their views do not reflect those of Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The information provided in this program should not be considered as professional advice or as a substitute for professional consultation. Listeners and viewers are encouraged to form their own opinions and seek independent advice when necessary. Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, and advertisers hereby disclaim any liability for any claims, damages, or losses incurred as a result of the information presented in this program.
Welcome to the Paranormal StakeOut radio TV show with Larry Lawson. As a former career law enforcement officer and law enforcement educator, Larry focuses on the use of tried and true law enforcement investigative techniques in conducting paranormal investigations. Despite his experience and training, Larry also keeps an open mind to discussions on topics that deal with evidence that are not quite as physical in nature. Paranormal StakeOut guests are professionals in the field of the paranormal and parapsychology, conducting the investigations and research needed to further the cause of paranormal study. Larry advocates an agenda of standardization of structure and training in the field of paranormal investigation and research for the purpose of one day being able to produce the evidence needed to convince a jury of the existence of the paranormal. Whether it is ghosts, UFOs, unsolved mysteries, hauntings or cryptids, no topic is beyond the investigative reach of Larry Lawson and the Paranormal StakeOut radio TV show team. Now, here is the host of the Paranormal StakeOut radio TV show, Larry Lawson.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you from beautiful Vero Beach, the home base for the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation and Indian River Hauntings. So I'm really happy to be back with you tonight. If you'd like to know a little bit about my group, you can check us out on our website at paranormalfbi.com or indianriverhauntings.com. You can also see us on Facebook at Indian River Hauntings 2341. But here we are on the X Zone, and if you want to get a hold of me here, send me a note asking questions, maybe wanting me to explain something before the show begins, you can send me a little note at paranormalstakeout.org, or you can just check out my website for the show at paranormalstakeout.org. As I said, happy to be back with you guys tonight. Fall's coming, October's here, my month, as I like to say. It's getting nice down here in Florida. But on a serious note, have you ever experienced an event where you'd wake up in the middle of the night? You're aware, you hear, you see, but you can't move. It's as if something is forcing you down, maybe sitting on your chest. You can't speak, you can't call out, but you're aware something's going on. It's a little thing that folks know as sleep paralysis. And tonight, my guest and I are going to talk about that and some of the interesting sidebars that come with sleep paralysis. Vicki Joy Anderson is a graduate of the University of Northwestern in St. Paul, Minnesota. She majored in Bible and English with a writing emphasis. After many years in corporate management, Vicki Joy stepped out in faith to become a full-time author and speaker in 2019. So to share with us tonight her thoughts on sleep paralysis and all that goes with it, I'd like to welcome Vicki Joy Anderson to the show.
Hey, Larry.
Vicki, so happy to have you here tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely happy to be here.
Well, like my folks to kind of get to know you a little bit, can you share a little bit about who Vicki Joy Anderson is, and then want to talk about this thing called sleep paralysis?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has kind of been a surreal journey for the last year and a half here. Never in my wildest dreams that I think that I was going to be speaking publicly on this topic, because as you know, in the past, you could get into a lot of hot water if you talked about crazy stuff like this. You could be deemed schizophrenic. And, in the old days, they threw you away, locked you up in padded rooms for talking about stuff like this. So,
in my business, your boss would send you for a psych exam, a fit for duty exam. So I totally understand that.
Yeah. So, I kind of thought I wanted to be a writer since I was 10 years old, and I thought I would just do something really respectable. And, I was kind of headed in that direction. And it's sort of a happy accident. I started writing for Real Dark News, which is a website, and just as a volunteer gig. But what I loved about it was there was no rules. Like the Tom Dunn, who runs the site, he didn't care what I wrote about. He didn't care how kooky I got, how weird I got, how many toes I stepped on. And so without really any boundaries, I started exploring more and more and more of these things that I've always wanted to talk about, because now I was actually being allowed to talk about it. And what really surprised me was, instead of a bunch of hateful comments and hate mails and, hate letters, people started coming out of the woodwork that this has happened to me as well. And what I kind of thought was just sort of this obscure group of people that were maybe delving into the occult or playing with Ouija boards. Actually, no, Larry, it's amazing. Thousands and thousands of people are saying that this is happening to them, has happened to them since childhood, has hounded them. Many of them don't know why. And it's not just happening to people on drugs or people who played with the Ouija board. It's happening to everyday, ordinary people. The most common demographic of people that contact me to talk about it are women in their 60s and 70s who have dealt with this their whole life. And maybe that's just, those are the types of people that are willing to talk about it. There's a lot of people that maybe aren't ready to talk about this stuff. But the fact is, this is happening to people who are Catholic and born again Christian. This isn't just something that happens to people who are hanging out in graveyards and wearing Megadeth t-shirts.
So what you're saying too is it's not just an occasional event with some people. It is a common, like maybe weekly or twice a week occurrence.
Yes, there are some people, and in fact, I'll put a statistic to this. I did a survey amongst my own followers about a year and a half ago, and this was a combination of people that followed me and Ellie Marzulli, who published the book through Spiral of Life. And so this was a demographic of men and women of all ages, all over the country and in other countries, of varying religious beliefs, agnostic all the way to flaming evangelical, right? So this was kind of the gamut of people. There was 250 people in this survey. One of the questions was, how often have you had sleep paralysis? Never, once or twice in my life. The last multiple choice option was, it's happened consistently over the course of my entire life. And I expected that to be less than 1%. I really didn't expect that to be high. And out of the 250 people surveyed, it came out to just under 35% said that it hounded them their entire life.
Now, you are also an experiencer of sleep paralysis. Is that why you headed down this road?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny. When I started writing for Real Dark News, as kind of my preliminary, test article, that I was sending in as sort of my example of my writing, one of the things I had said was, they had said, what kind of things can you write on? And I wrote sleep paralysis, just thinking like, well, I've had it my whole life, so obviously I can write on it. And so they kind of called my bluff, and they wrote back and said, write us an article on sleep paralysis. I'm like, well, I could do this in my sleep. I'm a writer and I've had this my whole life. And as I started to write the article, I felt like, well, I don't want to just write what's already out there. It's worthless to just copy and paste out of an encyclopedia. Like, what really is sleep paralysis? Who does it target and why? And I realized that even though I had had this my entire life, I really couldn't answer any of those basic questions. And the narrative like that you get online, much of what you have online is a bunch of garbage. It's a bunch of pseudoscience. It's a bunch of gaslighters. It's a bunch of scientific method, left brain people trying to poo-poo it. And then you've got, people on the other side of it. You've got the evangelical side of it, where every single thing it's all demons, and you opened these doors because you did something bad. And there's really not any intellectually honest explanations online for what it is. And so I decided I don't want to just write an article and be done with it. I really want to get to the bottom of this. This is something I've experienced my whole life. Why? What did I as a 3-year-old do to open a door? According to the church's explanation, you open these doors. Well, what did a 3-year-old do? And so it took me probably a good 3 weeks before I even had a breakthrough where I could start that article. And it ended up being a 2-part article. And once I had opened the door and had a couple aha moments through the research on those original 2 articles, I realized I think that this could be a book. And I sat down and very easily was able to put together a summary of chapters. And it took me about 1.5 years to write the book. And I just really wanted to come up with an explanation better than narcolepsy, drug and alcohol addiction, and Ouija boards. There's got to be something more to this than what they, in quotations, are telling us.
It's interesting you mentioned narcolepsy. My father was a narcoleptic, so I'm very, very familiar with that. We've talked about the background and how many people have been affected by this. But describe what sleep paralysis is, maybe in general terms, or maybe even if you could, what you've experienced for those of us that have not had that happen.
Sure. So the most generic explanation you're going to get, and this is the most common explanation, and I think the reason it's the most common is because some of this stuff gets so horrific and so graphic. Some gets violent, some gets sexual. And we're just starting to enter into a phase now where people are willing to tell you the whole story. But let's go 20 years ago up until now. The part of the story that people are willing to share because they feel like people won't think I'm totally nuts if I go this far. The typical thing is they wake up, they can't move. A terror that goes beyond a normal terror strikes them. They feel as if their soul is in jeopardy. It's kind of like I'm getting dragged to hell kind of a terror. And they will either see or sense some ominous presence in the room. For those that see it, it's usually a shadow man, a hat man, like an elderly old lady, something with red glowing eyes. It can be the alien grays. It can be a darker than dark black mist or shadow, a lot of times on the ceiling. And they'll talk about they can't breathe, something sitting on their chest. This is the typical classic, what people are willing to share, sleep paralysis 101. But if you can gain the trust of someone and they feel safe and they're going to share with you, okay, this is what really happened. A lot of people will talk about interactions in the astral realm, an actual out of body, where that entity in the room is pulling them into some other dimensional or liminal space. And they are in some sort of an astral nightmare that they can't wake up from. They'll see entities and beings. There's a lot of all of the senses are involved in this. So you've got people describing sound effects, vibrations, tingling in the body, things that they're hearing, sights and sounds, flashing lights. A lot of these sleep paralysis experiences are now turning more technological. So instead of ghost-like figures, they're seeing blinking lights and fiber optics and nanobots and nano spiders and things like that. You've got the whole incubus succubus genre of sleep paralysis, where people are having sexual encounters, and typically these aren't. Sometimes people will talk about astral sex, but in a sleep paralysis scenario, it's more of a violation. It's more of a rape scenario. Then you've got the whole UFO version. There's a whole alien gray sector of the sleep paralysis experiences where it's bright lights coming through the window and being pulled out the window. It's the alien grays. It's the medical experimentation. So it really does run the gamut. And what I have found is there's a lot of people who will call me and say, well, I don't think I've ever had sleep paralysis. And the reason why they don't think that they've had it is because their experience didn't fall into this perfect little, I saw a shadow man and couldn't breathe.
And with that, we're going to need to take our first break. First 13 minutes ran quick. So folks, stay with us. Lots to talk about with my guest tonight, Vicki Joy Anderson. So stay with us and we'll be right back.
Are you ready to dive into the mysteries of the unknown? Tune into the electrifying X-Zone radio TV show hosted by the one and only Rob McConnell.
I'm Rob McConnell, and get ready for a mind-bending journey through the unexplained phenomenon that surrounds us all. From UFO encounters to cryptids, ghosts, and everything in between, we've got it covered here in the X-Zone.
Rob McConnell, the seasoned investigator and renowned radio personality, brings you the most compelling interviews with top experts, authors, and experiencers from around the world. Each episode is an unforgettable exploration into the depths of the extraordinary.
That's right, X-Zone Nation. Join me every week as we open the door to the supernatural and explore the strange and amazing stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew.
And it's not just radio anymore. With our groundbreaking TV show, you can now witness the sessions unfold right before your eyes. From chilling reenactments to captivating visuals, prepare yourself for a multimedia experience like never before.
With a legacy spanning over 2 decades, the X-Zone Radio and TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, is your ultimate source for mind-blowing entertainment and thought-provoking discussions. Join our growing community of truth seekers as we continue to unlock the world's mysteries.
So, why wait? Step into the X-Zone and embark on a journey that will challenge your beliefs, ignite your curiosity, and keep you on the edge of your seat.
Remember, X-Zone Nation, the truth is out there, and it's waiting for you right here on the X-Zone Radio and TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Don't miss a minute of the action.
Tune in now on your favorite radio station or visit xzoneradiotv.com to join the adventure. The X-Zone Radio TV show with Rob McConnell, where reality meets the unknown.
The X-Zone Radio TV show, unraveling the secrets of the universe, one episode at a time. For more information, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com.
We are back on Paranormal Stakeout. My guest tonight, Vicki Joy Anderson. Wow, heavy first session there. And did you have any thoughts? You were on a roll there just before the break. Any thoughts you want to complete there before we move on?
Yeah, I just want people to know that even if your experience doesn't fit the common scenario of the little gargoyle on the chest, or I can't breathe, or the shadow man, or whatever, that it does not necessarily mean that you're not being harassed by this. Just understand that even though a lot of people have a common experience, a lot of people have experiences that are probably just as common as yours, but they don't want to talk about it. So those details aren't in the public foray yet. But don't necessarily let that be the judge to whether or not you've had this or not. If you're seeing something really weird and no one else has ever said that, that it doesn't mean that it's not legitimate, or that your story isn't just as legitimate as the others. So just know that that there's no kind of set formula for this.
Obviously, this is probably more widespread than most of us even think about. But one of the first questions that has to come to my mind, I guess it's the cop in me. What type of information do we have that this is a medical or a mental health issue, as opposed to perhaps a spiritual issue, which I want to get in with you in just a couple of minutes? How do we tell the difference?
Yeah. So this is where it gets tricky, because when you delve into the paranormal or the supernatural or the spiritual, if you start talking about entities with a conscious, and they're consciously have an agenda, they're smart enough to mimic physical and mental side effects. And this is where it gets complicated. So you could easily get a medical or a scientific or a psychological diagnosis for some of the aspects of this. But it doesn't rule out the supernatural, because the supernatural is intelligent enough to mimic those things to throw off the scent. And so you're over here throwing the medication or the whatever at these symptoms.
Mhm.
And you're really not touching the root of the issue, because those symptoms are sort of just red herrings into the woods, right? They're like the breadcrumb trail into the woods. So
Okay.
uh,
I got two sides to the next question I want to ask you. First of all the people that you've dealt with, is there a percentage where you've been able to identify, or a medical professional has been able to identify, that it was truly a medical issue or a mental health issue as compared to a spiritual issue? Has any of that ever come up?
yeah. So basically, this is where this gets tricky. It becomes a which comes first, the chicken or the egg scenario, because this
Okay.
is a form of harassment. It is very wearing, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually and physically wearing on you. Because what happens when you're having it night after night is you're losing sleep. You're not getting into the deep reparative sleep. Your spouse or whoever there is witnessing this is thinking you're nuts. It affects you wake up tired, you wake up disoriented. And many times, this is what a lot of people don't realize, is there are attachments being made when we come into contact with these entities. There are attachments being made, and so we're bringing things back into the physical realm with us that are influencing our mind and our mental capacity. And so a lot of times there are legitimate mental and physical side effects of this, but it still does not mean that those mental and physical ailments didn't originate because of your encounter with these beings. And that's where it gets tricky to untangle.
So, if I'm getting this right, it's your belief that the problem itself is spiritual in nature almost all the time, and just maybe the physical and mental health issues follow it because of the stress it puts on the body and the mind. Do I have that right?
I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth, but it can be both. And that's what makes it complicated, because sometimes if you are completely in a bad mental spot,
Mm-hmm.
that can open the door and make you susceptible to these visitations. And that's why it gets tricky. That's why I tell people in the book, the doctors and the scientists and the psychologists and the pastors on the paranormal people all need to sit down at the same table and share their notes. Because if a doctor says This is 100% of the time. There's a logical explanation to it, and there's a medication for it, and we're done. But then if you have a pastor that says 100% of the time you've opened some sort of spiritual door and you've let a demon in, then that person's not getting the help that they need. And so it really, the reason we're in the situation that we're in now is everybody wants this to be an arm wrestling match where there's a sole winner at the end who hits the fist to the table and they're the winner. And the fact is, it's a best out of, it's a best out of 10. You arm wrestle 10 times and 4 times this guy's going to win. And you know what I mean? So
yeah, the whole world's like that these days, where I'm the only one that's right, nobody else can be right. So
yeah.
I get you. So we've talked on the periphery here about spirituality and faith here, and I know because your background, you're a majored in Bible as well as English in school. You're a woman of faith. Tell us where you really think this is coming from. You've mentioned entities a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
Tell us what you see those entities as being, and how have you come to those conclusions?
Okay, absolutely. I'm going to be extremely forthright here. And this is kind of where the people on both sides of the table say, I don't want you, like neither one of them want me. But this is what I think. I know that the church wants all of this to be a demon. Every alien gray is a demon. Every shadow man is a demon, et cetera, et cetera. Here's where I split hairs on that, because I did study Bible and I did study this stuff, and I did have these experiences. A demon, the textbook theological definition of a demon, and this is if you go into rabbinical teachings, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, some of these older books and apocryphal books, the textbook Jewish and early Christian response to what a demon was a disembodied spirit of a Nephilim giant that walked around in antediluvian times, which was before the flood. So all of the Nephilim were wiped out in the flood. They died. Their physical bodies died, but their spirits were immortal because their fathers were watchers and their mothers were human. And so these demons are simply and only these disembodied spirits that are roaming the earth, and they're earthbound. So when you're up in the astral realm, or if you're in Ephesians 6:12 and they're talking about principalities and archons and spiritual forces of wickedness, you're no longer talking about demons. And when you're talking about familiar spirits and ascended masters and things like that up in the astral realm, and these ascended masters who are prior humans who reached some sort of higher state of being, much like Nimrod, who became a Gibborim, that sort of a thing, you're no longer talking about a demon. And this is where I sometimes get frustrated with the church. It's like there's no hierarchy. It's just everything bad is the devil or a demon. And there are so many more rank and file of nefarious beings out there, of different abilities and powers and rank and assignments. And so to just say that every single thing that happens to us is a demon, or every single thing that happens to us is because we sinned, or we, in the church, the typical answer, if you go to a pastor for counseling because of this, the typical answer is you let demons in because you must have done a bad thing. And it's possible, but there are so many other aspects to this than just that. And so where I think we need to be a little bit more open-minded and intellectually honest in this is that not every nefarious entity is a demon, but that doesn't mean that they're not nefarious. And it doesn't mean that they don't have a very conscious agenda going on. And I do think that we start to run into danger when we start ascribing levels of goodness to some of these things. And that is where I get nervous. I don't necessarily want to call every single one of them a demon, but when we start befriending these things and entering into long conversations with them and gleaning knowledge from them, then I think is really where we need to show a little bit more discernment, because these things can be wolves in sheep's clothing.
Help me a little bit here.
Sure.
You keep saying them, but they're not
Sure.
demons. Who are them?
So I'm talking about all of the cast of characters named in Ephesians 6:12. So Ephesians 6:12 talks about the heavenly places or the high places.
Principalities.
Yes. So if you actually look at that Greek word for the high places, the epuranios, in that context, the epuranios is the liminal space between the throne room and the earth. It's the astral plane. It's the second heaven. And the dwelling place of these archons and principalities and forces of darkness and ascended masters and all these things, it sets us up in Ephesians 6:12 that the battle is not against flesh and blood. So it's not against man fighting against each other. Our battle is not horizontal. Our real battle is vertical. It's with these things in these high places. And so because of the way it's worded in Ephesians 6:12, it's telling us to be on guard, because the things that are in the heavenly places are our enemies and they are at war with us. And so whether it's an archon, a principality, a ruler, a spiritual force, an ascended master, an angel of light, a fallen angel, a demon, we have so many names for them. But if their dwelling place or the space in which we go to contact or communicate with them is in a place that has been designated as a place where the enemies of man live, then no matter what sort of costume they put on or what they offer us as gifts, or whether they tell us we're chosen ones or we're going to help them save the planet, we have to be leery that these things could be leading us down a primrose path.
So you're discussing entities. The traditional thinking is you have heaven and all the angels, and then you've got all the bad guys down below. But what you're saying is there's a whole lot of stuff in between that can create problems for that. And that is the basis for a lot of the issues dealing with sleep paralysis. Have I got that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that sleep paralysis, just like the UFO scenarios, sleep paralysis is an abduction scenario. You are in the astral realm, your spirit, your light body, or whatever you want to call it. You are being separated from your body. It's not a nightmare. You are in that astral realm.
On that note, we got to take our next break, and we're going to talk about the connection with UFOs and sleep paralysis when we get back. So stay with us, folks, with my guest, Vicki Joy Anderson. Be right back.
Are you ready for a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat? Get ready to dive into the gripping memoir by Bart Sibrel titled Moon Man. Bart Sibrel takes you on a heart-pounding journey, unmasking the truth behind America's famous Apollo missions. Prepare yourself for hair-raising encounters with agents from the U.S. government's top-secret agencies. In Moon Man, Sibrel fearlessly reveals his real-life espionage adventures, shining a light on one of the CIA's best-kept secrets. Brace yourself for shocking revelations, including Sibrel's discovery of privately recorded audio exposing an Apollo astronaut's chilling plot, a plot orchestrated by the CIA. That's right. As Sibrel unveils this groundbreaking evidence, it becomes clear that there is much more to the Apollo missions than meets the eye. Could it be that we've been deceived all along? Moon Man is a gripping page-turner that challenges everything you thought you knew. It's a mind-bending journey into the unknown, where the line between truth and fiction becomes blurred. Don't miss this opportunity to uncover the secrets hidden for decades. Let your curiosity guide you as you join Bart Sibrel on his quest to find the truth. Moon Man, available now at Sibrel.com. That's Sibrel.com. Prepare to have your beliefs shaken to the very core.
Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout with my guest, Vicki Joy Anderson. Heavy conversation, Vicki. We got talking a lot about entities, and I want to start discussing its connection with the UFO world. But what is the most common entity associated, since we pretty well established it's your opinion that entities are the cause of this? What's the most common one?
The most common one is probably the shadow man. The succubus is also very common, but again, a lot of people don't want to talk about that because that involves usually a sexual violation.
Mm-hmm. And succubus, incubus, if you can explain that.
Sure. So an incubus is the male energy iteration, and the succubus would be the female energy iteration. These are entities or demonic presences, whatever your frame of thinking is, but they actually sexually violate the person. So it's not just I can't breathe, I can't move, but now they're being violated in some way, and that's another area that sort of overlaps with some of the UFO abduction experiences, as those can sometimes be sexually in the more like genetic realm.
How common is that?
I believe it's more common than most people, that it's the part of the sleep paralysis scenario that no one really wants to talk about. And even if you don't get the incubus or the succubus, or you don't get the rape scenario, a lot of people will have experiences where the sleep paralysis experience is what comes after a very explicit dream, which I think is actually an incubus or succubus experience in the astral realm. I think sometimes that's more than just a dream, but it's more of a dream scenario. But then you've got another whole group of people that are now coming out, probably because things that were taboo to talk about are no longer taboo. And now I have many people who have told me that the sleep paralysis that they had from childhood was a grooming sort of a situation, and that a lot of this sleep paralysis stuff that they were having in childhood was an early sexual awakening that in later in life led to various sexual addictions, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm hearing more and more people contact me telling me about that.
So what I'm hearing is that this isn't just somebody stopping by to keep somebody awake at night. This is something that the victim, if you will, is chosen at a young age and then systematically attacked over years.
Yeah, yep. I very much do think it is a somewhat of a grooming process. And I don't just mean that sexually. I even think that it is sort of a re-education program. A lot of the people that have spent most of their life astral projecting or interacting with these beings from these other dimensions, they have a certain theosophical lens through which they see the world. And when you look at some of the people in the 18th and 19th centuries, 20th century, who are still extremely influential writers, and their textbooks and their teachings are fundamental in science and medicine and literature and art. I'm talking about the Blavatskys and the Galens and the Lovecrafts, etc. They were card-carrying theosophists and astral projectors, and much of their writing was automatic writing and direct quotations and dictation that they were receiving from ascended masters in the astral realm.
So motive then, if this is a systematic attempt to control, transform, evolve a person in this realm, the realm that we're familiar with, what's the motive? Why is this happening?
Sure. I'm glad you used the word transformation, because that's kind of like the key word that if I could summarize my book in one word as to what the end game is, it is a complete and utter global cultural transformation. And, you look at the Lord's Prayer where it says, on earth as it is in heaven, right? And so you have this whole concept from the book of Genesis on, where right from the very beginning, when Moses and Abraham were shown glimpses into the heavenly realm, the tabernacle that they built in the wilderness was a replication of the one that they saw in heaven. And so from day one, it was an attempt to bring heaven down, so to speak. Let's replicate here on earth the heaven that belongs to Yahweh, the God we create. And so the enemies of God are doing the exact same thing, but their operating room is from the second heaven rather than the third. And so they are attempting to do on earth as it is in heaven, but their heaven. The occult would say as above, so below, which is kind of the same concept of let's emulate, let's reset up on earth our golden age. Let's replicate earth. So what they have to do is re-educate us from this sort of Judeo-Christian value system and the Torah and the law and the 10 Commandments and a creator God who loves us created this earth and he sent his son to die. They have to reorient us through the framework and the lenses of their world system, their political system, their religious system. And it's taken a lot of work. The Watchers attempted to do that in antediluvian times. They were thwarted. Nimrod attempted to do it during Tower of Babel times and was thwarted, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that it is actually a re-education program, a grooming program to set up their kingdom on earth. It's kind of a race to the finish, right? Who in the heavenlies will set up their kingdom on earth first? Who will get the scepter of the kingdom?
So this is truly a battle of good and evil in your mind, where it's heaven is trying to keep us on the right track, but for lack of a better term, the Denzians in hell are trying to turn the earth into their own world. Is
Yeah,
that what I'm hearing?
absolutely. I mean, it sounds like the most cliche thing in the world, but why are we as a culture obsessed with this concept? Almost every movie we go and see, it's some saving the world, it's some superhero, it's some DC Marvel. And if you delve into the depths of a lot of those DC and Marvel comic books and the Transformer franchise, which is all the Black Cube and the Kabbalah, and this is ancient mythology being retold. And so if we were to go back in time, 10,000 years and tell the story of Superman who came down, from his planet that was destroyed. And if we told the story of, Thor and Loki, if we told the story of, the Transformers, they would have different names. They wouldn't say Superman and Thor and Loki. They would have different names, but they would know exactly what we were talking about, because this is all just ancient mythology being retold.
The Romans and Greeks, I mean,
Yes.
they basically use different names for the same person.
Exactly.
I totally understand. Interesting. So finally getting around to the UFO part of it, how does this connect with the UFO conspiracy, if you will? And
Yeah.
why are we seeing grays? Why are grays a part of sleep paralysis?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, this is a lot. So with the UFO phenomenon, that can happen during a sleep paralysis scenario, but it does not have to, because we've all heard the story about, the people in the cornfield or out on the camping trip or, whatever. So it doesn't have to happen in a sleep paralysis scenario, but it can. So some people have those experiences during a sleep paralysis experience. Where I think that sleep paralysis has a stronger connection to UFO abductions than we ever thought before is I actually think that it is an abduction scenario. And one of the most clever aspects of the sleep paralysis abduction scenario is that we miss the missing time, which is usually the tip off that something happened. So with a UFO abductee, they don't remember what happened. They saw a bright light or an orb or a ship or something unusual, and it seems like a split second later they're in their car, but there's something about what's happening in the physical realm that tips them off that they've lost time. The sun has gone down, they're 100 miles down the road, 3 hours have gone by. So they know something happened simply because there's time missing that they can't account for. Well, when you go to bed at night and you sleep 5 to 8 hours, when you wake up in the morning, you are never going to question what happened to that time. And so if that's the only tip off that you have had some sort of interdimensional conflict, you're going to lose that in a sleep paralysis scenario. And then you're going to go online, and every channel or website that you possibly find will say sleep paralysis is when you wake up in your bedroom and you can't move. And so if you don't know you have missing time, and you believe all of the narratives online that this is just one of those, I woke up too fast and I ate pizza before I went to bed and I should maybe be taking melatonin or something, you're never even going to suspect that you are an abductee. And it's an extremely covert way of doing this. And I can delve into that deeper, but I don't know where we are with time. So I want to make sure we...
we're going to need about 3 days probably for that.
Right.
Okay. Two issues here. First of all, so are you suggesting that when people normally sleep, they're perhaps going through this and don't realize it?
Yes, I do. And now I don't think that for people that know that they have sleep paralysis and they're harassed by it their whole life, what I don't think that we're properly understanding is we think that the sleep paralysis episode is that 5 or 10 minutes when we wake up in our bedroom and see a shadow person or feel. And what I'm trying to tell people is what's happening typically is you're in the dream state. You're deep in an REM cycle and you're having a normal dream. And it is usually within the dream that the dream turns sinister. The sleep paralysis starts there in the dream state. You hear the vibrational sounds. The dread comes on. You're like, oh no, it's happening again. And then instantly you wake up. So it's this seamless transition that you wake up from a nightmare. And thank God I woke up from the nightmare, but I woke up so quick that the nightmare is still kind of playing out in front of my room. And I hate when that happens. But what I'm saying is, just like the UFO abductees who have sometimes hours of missing time that they can't account for, just because your brain thinks that there is a split second between that nightmare and your waking up. We always think that the nightmare woke us up. What my personal experience is that it happens deep within the REM cycle. And what I think is happening, this is my theory, I'm still studying this out. I'm still talking to other people who've had the experience, but
what I want to do, hold on just a second, because yes, we're out of time. Coming up in the next break, I want you to hold that thought because I want to get it in one straight line, not having it broke up. So folks, we still got one more session to go here. So stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Welcome back, everybody, for this final section of this evening's Paranormal Stakeout. Before we get going, want to remind everybody, if you'd like to check out and see what we're up to down here in Florida, go to our website at paranormalfbi.com or indianriverhauntings.com. Check us out on YouTube at Indian River Hauntings 2341. Get a hold of me at coastguideparanormalstakeout.org and send us a message. Let me, if you got any questions, we'll bring it up at the beginning of the show. And you can also check out all my programs at paranormalstakeout.org. But I also want to remind you to take a look at all the great programming at xzbn.net. That's the X Zone Radio and TV show broadcast network for all the great shows that are on here. So check those guys out too. A lot of terrific shows. And Vicki Joy, you've got a book. Can you tell folks about your book and where they can find out more about you?
Absolutely. Thank you. It's called They Only Come Out at Night, Exposing the Dark Weapon of Sleep Paralysis. And it is available exclusively on lamarzulli.net. But if you hang out over at my website, vickijoyanderson.com, you can find it there too, and it'll take you directly to LA's site. And so go into all the stuff we've been talking about here. Chapter 4 is of interest to most people, astral vampires and threshold covenants. But we go into the history of this and the subjective and objective journalistic aspects of it, as well as who they target and why and how to get out of the astral matrix.
Excellent. So check that out, folks. Now, let's get back to where we were at before the break. Go ahead and pick up that thought if you could and run with it.
Yep, absolutely. So I want to blast people's paradigm here. We are taught to believe that sleep paralysis is a short 5 to 10 minute occurrence in our bedroom as we wake up, and we can kind of shake it off once we wake up and it's over and done with. And that was really scary, but holy cow, glad that's done. What I'm trying to explain to people is you need to think of this more in terms of a UFO abduction, where in the dream world, you encounter these entities, something occurs, you wake up, you have no memory of what happened after you first encountered them. Your memory's wiped the same way the UFO abductees can't remember. And the period of time in the bedroom where you can't move or you're seeing the entities, that is the tail end of the experience. It's not the whole of it or the beginning of it. It's the tail end of it. And our bodies are physically showing every single sign of trauma or an adrenaline rush. Our body, our mind can't remember, and our body is trying as best as it can to show us every sign that we've just encountered something traumatic. All the saliva in our mouth is dried up. We can't breathe. We're having a panic attack. We're terrified. Many times we're on our back and our back is arched off of the bed. A lot of times people wake up in defensive positions where they're holding their neck or they're gripping things. And so our body is trying to remind us that something happened that we can't remember. But because we don't have that clue of missing time, a lot of people just chalk everything off to a nightmare.
I got to ask you this question, Vicki. How do you know this? Without medical evidence, how do you know this is occurring? How do you know it's taking a longer period of time? Vicki, can you hear us? Well, we're hopefully getting her back on here in just a second. Little technical difficulty. Interesting topic that we've been discussing here. I've got some other questions I want to ask, such as where do the Greys actually come in to play here? Are the Greys actually an entity that we know them? Hopefully we're going to get her back here in just a second. Not yet. Apologize for the technical difficulty here, folks, but it's an interesting topic that unfortunately we don't have a lot of scientific answers for at this point in time. But it is an interesting part of the paranormal world that we're studying. I find it interesting that we've been talking about the Hat Man or the shadow people that are often accompanying with paranormal investigations as being part of this. The big question we gotta have to ask though is this psychological or is this truly entities from another dimension interfering with us? And those are the questions we have to ask. And we're still having a few technical difficulties, so just hang with us for a couple of seconds. Want to remind everybody that if you do get an opportunity to a question or something you'd like us to share on the show, please get a hold of me at ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org. Would love to hear from you. Would love to get your thoughts and comments on the show, and we'll do that at the beginning of each show. So I want to recommend that you do that. Got a couple of other things coming up down here in our neck of the woods over the next few weeks because it's Halloween. It's October. If you're in the area, we've got a couple of events going on here in Vero Beach, Florida. If you go to our website at www.indianriverhauntings.com, you can check out our Halloween bash on the 14th. We're doing a dinner and a ghost hunt to support the Indian River Historical Society here in Vero Beach, and that's going to be a dinner and an event and an actual investigation at a place called the Holstrom House here in Vero. So if you're in the area, check it out, or if you want to just come down and learn a little bit more about the history of Vero Beach, give us a call. Still having some technical difficulties. Do apologize for this, but I do appreciate your patience. If you'd also like to see a little bit about what we do, how we conduct our business, check us out on our YouTube site, as I mentioned before, at Indian River Hauntings 2341. And you'll see not only some past shows that we've done with Indian River Hauntings, but also some investigations and a couple of productions that were put out where we were followed by a camera crew at some of our investigations. I think you might enjoy that quite a bit. Do join Rob McConnell for their Halloween bash. I do believe that is on the 14th of the month. If I've got that wrong, Rob, let me know. Because I'd like all of you to maybe pop on to xzbn.net and check that program out if you can. And I don't think that we're going to get her to come back at this point. Next week, you might want to tune in next week. We have another show, and this will be with a guest, Micah Dank. He's going to talk about hidden codes of the Bible. So it's going to kind of almost fit right into what we're talking about here with maybe some of the stories and the mysteries the Bible is trying to tell us about the other side. So I would highly recommend you tune in for that show next week. So and it'll be out on not only on Spreaker but also on YouTube, and you can find it under Larry Lawson Interviews, Michael Dank, or any of the guests that I've had on here. So sorry, just got a little distracted. There was something on the screen where I was hoping we'd get Vicki Joy back. That was a tremendously interesting discussion, and I'd recommend you do get her book. It does answer quite a few of the questions. Once again, it's interpretation, but I do think she does reveal some compelling arguments for her theories on this. So I do recommend you take a look at her book, and it's they only come out at night, exposing the dark weapon of sleep paralysis. So please check that out. So with that, folks, apologize for any technical difficulties tonight. Was a great show. Thank you for staying with us. Please take care of yourselves. Give your kids a hug. Take care of your family. Until we meet again, we'll see you on the other side. Have a great night, folks.